Welcome to NBA Jam Tatman QC on Fire Edition. Boom shakalaka.
Happy Little Games. As a child of the 1980s, there were a few things I gravitated towards. The first thing, of course, was bowling. The second was video games, and the third was professional wrestling. Yes, I will admit that I was a true Hulkamaniac back in the day. Everything changed, of course, when I first saw Macho Man Randy Savage appear on WWF TV. Also around this time, my parents got cable, which is where I first discovered the 16-time World Heavyweight Champion, the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. Oh, I forgot. Something else I gravitated towards was my 18-year-old babysitter, Hubba Hubba. Anyway, growing up in this era, naturally, I was obsessed with wrestling video games. I can recall going to Target to buy the first WrestleMania game for the NES, but thankfully they were sold out. I say thankfully because I did end up playing it at a friend's house around this time, and it wasn't that great. The first standout title for me as far as wrestling video games go would have to be Super Fire Pro Wrestling on the Super Famicom. Today, just in time for WrestleMania, I thought I would take a look back at my absolute favorite wrestling series, which would be the AKI series of games. This massively popular engine would start on the PlayStation, transition to the Nintendo 64, and then end up utilizing something totally unexpected. This series of games includes, but not limited to, WCW Revenge, Virtual Pro Wrestling, and WWF No Mercy. Why was Ric Flair omitted from WCW Revenge? What wrestlers were taken out of WWF No Mercy at the last minute? Let's find out as we explore the AKI series of wrestling video games. In the beginning, during the dark ages of wrestling video games, we were treated to early button mashers such as Muscle, WrestleMania, and World Championship Wrestling, all for the original NES. It wasn't all bad though, as we were given stellar titles such as Natsumi Championship Wrestling, Saturday Night Slam Masters, Wrestle War, and of course, WWF WrestleFest. The original developers at Human gave the Fire Pro series a full-on hot 3D injection with the game Fire Pro Wrestling Iron Slam 96, which was released only in Japan. A lot of compromises were made with this game, such as a more limited roster, no customization, and limited game modes. It's the controls that have really been sacrificed, as Fire Pro just didn't translate well into 3D. Because of the lack of success of this game, an offshoot of the Human Company formed its own development house, which was Manbreeze. Since the 3D era was upon us, they decided to give it one more try with the game Virtual Pro Wrestling for the PlayStation 1. Rather than translate over the 2D mechanics from Fire Pro into the third dimension, they decided to try something new. This game doesn't use exact timing as found in Fire Pro, with you having to hold the charge button to initiate a grapple, which will perform the move depending on which direction you have pushed. While not as refined as later games in the series, the seeds of something greater have been planted. The roster has been upped to 60 wrestlers, which, if you are familiar with the Fire Pro games, then you know that a number of unlicensed wrestlers were used for the most part. These wrestlers looked similar enough and had the actual movesets of said wrestler, but typically with a different name. This game is no different, featuring a number of actual wrestlers from all across the world, including legends such as Andre the Giant, Terry Funk, and Bruiser Brody. The game has a wide variety of moves at your disposal, including a taunt, diving attacks outside the ring, counters, and more. Your moveset will change depending on how far away you are from your opponent, and also the direction you hold the D-pad while pressing the attack button. The traditional energy bar has also been replaced with a spirit meter. Crowd enjoyment is something that has been around since the early Fire Pro games, and is prevalent here as well. For example, if you get the snot beaten out of you or just hang out at ringside too much, the spirit meter will decrease. The meter serves as a crowd enjoyment monitor, stamina, as well as the energy of your wrestler. The more moves you do in succession, the faster the meter will flash. When the spirit meter flashes, it gives you the opportunity to perform a finishing move. Up until this point, finishing moves in video games, if any at all, were just added to the wrestler's regular arsenal of moves. Similar to real professional wrestling, the finishing move is used as sort of a reward for doing good in the game and being the better wrestler. There are a number of different moves in the game, including back grapples, top rope maneuvers, and more. The game offered a number of modes, including Best of 7 and League, but it doesn't have basic matches that you would find nowadays, such as Tag Team or Battle Royal. While the game isn't perfect and it does have some jerky animation, it was still great for its time, provided you could read Japanese. In 1997, THQ released this game in America under the title WCW vs. the World. Because this was just an American version of Virtual Pro Wrestling, the game featured only 14 licensed wrestlers from WCW. Now it did have all of the other unlicensed characters from Japan, such as Vader, Scott Norton, Great Muta, and Antonio Inoki, but as far as actual licensed wrestlers, that was it. Since the time that this game was first developed in Japan, the NWO storyline had taken hold in WCW. For some strange reason, Hulk Hogan is shown on the cover in his NWO attire, but on the character select screen he has his red and yellow bandana, but is ripping off his black shirt. Everything else has been translated over from the Japanese release. Around this time, the company of Man Breeze evolved into the AKI Corp and would release quite possibly the most influential wrestling game, which was WCW vs. NWO World Tour on the Nintendo 64. This game would be built from the ground up on the Nintendo 64 hardware, which was more multiplayer friendly, allowing up to 4 players right out of the box with no additional hardware. This was a big complaint about the previous WCW game on the PlayStation, so they wanted to fix it straight away. This included 4 players simultaneously, tag team matches, and a battle royal. The engine was ported over but was greatly enhanced with controls tailored for the N64 controller. Certain attacks in the game are now pressure sensitive, such as tapping the B button will give you a weak strike, whereas holding the B button will deliver a strong strike. The grapples are pressure sensitive as well and have also been changed. Your character has 6 different light grapples or 6 different strong grapples using a combination of the A and B buttons along with the D-pad. As I mentioned, there are more moves in this game as well, including a number of different running strikes and even running attacks on opponents who are down on the mat. You can still climb the turnbuckle and perform diving maneuvers to the outside. You can also block strikes or grapples depending on which button you press. And of course, there are mandatory rope breaks in the game. Due to its tag team multiplayer madness, there are even double team moves in the game. You can lift your opponent onto your shoulders and your tag team partner can dive off the top, performing the Legion of Doom's signature move, the Doomsday Device. Once the spirit meter is flashing, you get your opponent into a strong grapple and flick the analog stick, which will perform your finisher. If the action spills outside the ring, all moves will take double damage and you can even throw them into the railings and the steel post. You can even pull out a foreign object like a chair to knock the ever-loving piss out of your opponent. In the options menu, there is something called realism, which you can turn on or off. This enables bloodshed. Also, by using a face stretch submission, you can actually tear open the mask of any masked wrestler. One of the many secrets in the game is that you have the ability to steal your opponent's finisher. There are also 4 different outfits to choose from. The roster consists of around 40 wrestlers, including a few unlockables. This time around, we have 25 WCW and NWO wrestlers, as well as 15 other unlicensed wrestlers from around the world. The character of Diamond Dallas Page was just starting to take off, so he was included as a hidden character. The usual WCW suspects are there, including Ric Flair, Hollywood Hulk Hogan, Eddie Guerrero, and Steven Regal. Yes, that's right, Steven Regal, not William Regal. Each wrestler has 4 different outfits to choose from, which are typically based on their real-life attire. Rey Mysterio even has his Spider-Man outfit. The animation was also greatly improved, with everything coming together into one fantastic gaming experience. Even all the way back in 1997, I had contacts in the video game industry. The game I was most intrigued by was WCW Nitro for the PlayStation due to its utterly realistic graphics. My main man on the inside told me that Nitro was a steaming pile and that I should wait for WCW vs NWO. Boy oh boy was he right. Also released in 1997, but only in Japan, was Virtual Pro Wrestling 64.
プロレスゲームの決定版ついに登場 NWO WCW の参戦でレスラー数技数も大幅ボリュームアップしかも4人同時プレイも実現アスメックバーチャルプロレスリング64これ以上のプロレスゲームは望めない
This came out after World Tour, and rather than port this game to the Japanese Nintendo 64 market, they decided to spruce it up a bit and create its own unique product. This game featured a fantastic introduction, showcasing all the new Japanese wrestlers, including the roster of WCW vs NWO World Tour. Speaking of the roster, it's been expanded to 110, which now features wrestlers from all over the world. Not only do you have a plethora of actual wrestlers to choose from, but you also have MMA fighters. These are not just MMA fighters inside of a pro wrestling ring, but they also fight under MMA rules, which is what you would see in the K1. In addition to the all-new wrestlers, there are over 100 new moves added, as well as a combo system given to MMA fighters and certain wrestlers such as Vader. When this is initiated, you're given 6 chances to strike your opponent in succession. Depending on which direction you hold the D button and button combination will perform a different strike. At this point, we still do not have any ring entrances or themes, but that will change in upcoming games. You also have a goofy little referee you can switch on or off in the options. A wrestler edit mode has also been included, which will let you mix and match different parts of costumes and colors from the various wrestlers and create all new attires. Unfortunately though, there is still no way to edit the movesets. There's also a handy, dandy character rename feature for you to use. Thankfully, there are various patches that you can download that will translate approximately 99% of the text into English for you to use on your favorite emulator. This is an excellent update to an already great game, and the addition of the MMA mode really helped this title stand out.
WCW NWO Revenge, only on Nintendo 64. Nintendo Power says WCW NWO action is bigger than ever. Fans will eat this one up. Featuring over 60 of WCW and NWO superstars with custom finishes and trademark moves. 4-player Battle Royal mode with double teaming. and more weapons than ever before.
Get addicted.
Call 1-800-WCW-8661 to order now. Also available wherever video games are sold.
Revenge is just too sweet.
In 1998, WCW NWO Revenge was released on the Nintendo 64. This is the follow-up to WCW vs. NWO World Tour, and they made a number of new additions. For starters, the roster was made up of mostly WCW and NWO wrestlers, but they are divided up into factions. Not only do you have WCW, but you also have NWO Black and White, the Wolfpack, and even Raven's Flock. The trademark intro from previous AKI games has also been included and updated, showing off the various WCW wrestlers and especially the high-flying luchadors. The character models have also been given a significant boost, with the arenas modeled to look like actual WCW pay-per-view events and weekly TV shows such as Nitro. There are over 60 wrestlers to choose from, including Macho Man Randy Savage, Alex Wright, and the chairman of WCW, La Parka. La Parka even comes to the ring carrying his trademark chair. Sting also comes carrying his trademark bat. One person you will not see in this game, which definitely irked me as a kid, was Ric Flair. At this point, he was going through a contract dispute with WCW, so they pulled him from the game. Entering the ring has also been updated, as larger wrestlers will now step over the top rope, whereas lighter luchadors will jump over extremely fast while entering. Certain powerful moves will also give you a fast cut instant replay, which shows the move over from 3 different angles. This is one of my favorite new additions to the game. There's nothing quite like braining someone with a foreign object and getting a nice quick replay 3 times in a row. Speaking of the replays, after the match, a slow motion replay of the finishing move is shown. Another new addition to the gameplay is the championship mode, which sees your wrestler set out in an attempt to capture 5 different belts. There is the US Championship, Cruiserweights, Tag Team, TV, and the Heavyweight Championship to contend for. Something else that is cool is that your wrestler walks to the ring with a manager. Hulk Hogan is accompanied by Eric Bischoff, Scott Steiner is brought to the ring by Vincent, etc. It's also possible to assign a manager when you're creating a wrestler. There are a number of hidden characters as well. In addition to everything else, certain wrestlers have character-specific finishers you can do from the corner. A number of new weapons were also included, however, there are still no breakable tables. This is often thought of as the greatest WCW wrestling video game in history, and rightfully so. After this game was released, WCW ended their deal with THQ and started a partnership with EA, bringing us the stellar WCW Mayhem and WCW Backstage Assault. I will be the first to admit I did like WWF Warzone back in the day, even having to drive 60 miles to pick up a copy because every store locally was sold out. After THQ and WCW parted ways, THQ would end up boarding the WWF train and finally gave us the fantastic WrestleMania 2000.
Rock can't believe this little Rudy Pucciabroni has stolen all the Rock's signature moves.
He walks like The Rock. He talks like The Rock. He's got the rock bottom, the people's elbow, the people's eyebrow.
That's gimmick infringement.
That ain't right.
He's even got the millions and the millions of the Rock's fans playing this video game.
The Rock, know your role and shut your mouth.
Over 50 WWF superstars, all their signature moves and talks, plus entrances, cage matches, and create a wrestler. WrestleMania 2000.
You like pancakes?
The trademark intro found in previous games has also been carried over and shows off the various superstars performing their signature moves. The gameplay is what you would expect from previous AKI games, but there are a few additions, including a running grapple and the Tree of Woe in the corner, among others. The roster has been updated to over 50 with a number of hidden wrestlers to unlock. This time around, we get our first Create a Wrestler tool in any AKI game, and while it's not as detailed as what we would become accustomed to, it's still extremely cool. You can even customize the entrance attire. Hundreds of moves are available for you to select, as well as taunts and even how the wrestler walks. The edit mode has also been retained so you can update your wrestler's attire as well. Each wrestler also has 4 different attires similar to the previous games. A number of female wrestlers have also been included. You can create your own pay-per-view events and also title belts. One new match mode that fans were clamoring for was the cage match, and thankfully it's been brought in. You can ram your opponent's head into the cage, which will sometimes give them a crimson mask. The only way to win is to escape the cage, but if you are climbing up, it is possible to shake the other wrestler off the cage, which does significant damage to them. For total carnage, there is even a first blood match, which is a lot of fun. I can recall playing against my nephew Christopher using this match type, and he hit me with a strong strike as soon as the match was on, which busted me open and caused me to lose in the first 3 seconds. Boy was I salty. There is also a Royal Rumble match type, but there are only 4 wrestlers available on screen at once. The championship mode has been totally redone as the Road to WrestleMania, which is where all the unlockables and hidden features are accessed. You start off by fighting from the bottom of the card on weekly shows, moving on to pay-per-views and then the main event. It's pretty in-depth and it's very cool. The entrances have also been updated with actual wrestlers' themes, and even basic Titantrons are included. It's another excellent title in the AKI series of games, but we are not done by a long shot. The year 2000 brought us the Nintendo 64's greatest Japanese wrestling video game, which was Virtual Pro Wrestling 2. Rather than do a small upgrade over WrestleMania 2000, they decided to drop certain match types and the actual WCW license. This game is officially licensed by All Japan Pro Wrestling, which includes numerous other unlicensed wrestlers and MMA fighters from a roster of over 100. The more popular American match types such as First Blood and cage matches have been removed, but it does offer other styles such as Lucha Libre, MMA, and even death matches. This game is definitely built upon the strong style, and the moves look devastating. Apparently the logic of the moves is something that was greatly enhanced, as the more powerful moves will do even more damage. Defense once again plays a factor, but the window for reversing moves is a bit smaller than the WWF games. What's very cool is sometimes upon receiving a huge move, your wrestler will jump up and clothesline your opponent. This power move is something that was often seen in Japanese strong style matches and is typically met with thunderous applause. The countering system has also been updated, allowing for chain counters, which makes for some very unique matches. This time, weight factors into a match, as if you are a smaller wrestler going up against Andre the Giant, the wrestler will attempt to lift him only to grab his back and endure some damage. However, if Andre is weak enough, you can body slam him, but you will fall over from the strain. A very cool detail indeed. Also included in this game is the MMA mode, which for the longest time was the best MMA game, which ironically enough is buried inside of a pro wrestling title. Your MMA fighter has different grapples, strikes, takedowns, and submissions. Obviously, these fighters cannot go to the top rope. This title also featured a Create a Wrestler mode, and it was even more detailed than WrestleMania 2000. You're now able to create hairstyles and even masks with different horns and other features. Since this game carried the actual All Japan license, the other fictional wrestlers were modified so they didn't look as close to their real-life counterparts as found in Virtual Pro Wrestling 64. However, The edit mode has also been retained so you can go in and update their attire. You can now wrestle in real locations such as Kawasaki Stadium and the Tokyo Dome. Speaking of the stadiums, the entire presentation has also been updated to make it feel more like an actual episode of All Japan TV. Complete ring entrances are included with the camera starting back in the locker room, following the wrestler out with a few pieces of actual All Japan music. There is even a ring announcer. The creator belt is also included, and this time the wrestlers actually wear the belts to the ring. What's extremely cool is you can create a Triple Crown title, which sees the wrestler holding all 3 belts and carrying all 3 belts to the ring. There are also around 30 legends to unlock, including Tiger Mask, Andre the Giant, and Bruiser Brody. You have to play through the story mode to unlock them, as well as various creator wrestler pieces, and even a new venue to wrestle in. By the way, if you don't want to play through and unlock everything, you can always download a save file off of GameFAQs.com. Similar to Virtual Pro Wrestling 64, there is an English patch available with the majority of the roster renamed if you want to check it out. When I first started production on this video, the plan was to make one long presentation. However, I soon realized that each of these games didn't just deserve a mere mention, so I decided to go a little more in depth with each title. The video is running close to 30 minutes already, and I still have 4 or 5 more games to cover. This was one of the most enjoyable videos I've done as of late, just because I love this series so much. It's been a while since I've had the chance to play any of these titles in depth, so it was quite fun. The series is fantastic, so if you are a wrestling video game fan, you owe it to yourself to give this game a shot. Check back next week for part 2. You'll be glad you did.
の最強宣言。あの王道全日本プロレスも正式参戦。圧倒的な選手技モードで夢のカードが実現。バーチャルプロレス2王道継承。プロレスゲームの最高傑作バーチャルプロレスシリーズの最新作がついに登場。世界中で400万本以上を売り上げた究極のプロレスゲーム。他の追随を許さないリアルなビジュアル、最新の必殺技も忠実に再現。従来のプロレスゲームの常識をはるかにしのぐ完成度の高さ。全日本プロレスと任天堂64の最強タッグで生まれた最高傑作、それがバーチャルプロレス2王道継承。ジャイアント馬場をはじめ全日本プロレスの選手が全て実名で登場。四天王はもちろんハンセンやベイダーまでまさにオールキャスト。選手の技、ファイティングスタイル、個性までリアルに再現されている。さらに日米のプロレス界、世界の格闘界から総勢およそ100名に及ぶ個性あふれる選手たちが登場。夢のカードも完璧に実現できる。最新作ではコンピューターの思考をさらに強化。ルチャ系の選手なら飛び技、格闘技系の選手なら関節技中心と各選手の個性に合わせた独自のファイトが展開される。また今までのプロレスゲームにはなかった連携プレイも可能になった。操作はシンプルなのでプロレスマニア、格闘ゲームファンはもちろんアクションゲームの苦手な初心者までプロレスの醍醐味を心ゆくまで堪能することができる。新しいゲームモードも数多く追加されている。しかもチャンピオンベルトを自分で作ることができる。ベルトを集めて真の覇者となれ。トーナメント戦、リーグ戦も熱い。さらに圧巻は4人のレスラーが同時に戦うバトルロイヤル。最大30人が激闘を繰り広げる。またプレイヤーが全日本プロレスの選手となり1年間のサーキットを体験できる王道継承モードも搭載されている。大評判のエディット機能は大幅にパワーアップ。名前、コスチューム、顔、体格、スタイル、パラメータ、持ち技まで自由に設定でき、理想のレスラーや自分だけのユニークな選手を生み出すことができる。エディットしたレスラーはコントローラーパックでデータを無限に保存可能。友達同士でバトルもできる。実際に技やフォームを確認しながらオリジナルキャラを作れるので初心者でも安心。自分だけの選手でプロレス界の頂点を極めろ。プロレスファンのこだわりに応える演出効果が炸裂。超美麗なグラフィック、リングサイドの興奮を体感できる絶妙なカメラワーク、選手のぶつかり合い、マットのきしみまで伝わってくる臨場感。これぞ究極のプロレスゲーム。迫力の場外乱闘、本物にこだわった攻防戦、狂気をリングに持ち込めるようになりリアリティや過激度がさらにアップ。最新の大技もいち早く取り入れ完全再現。世界中のあらゆるプロレス技を搭載しあの幻の必殺技も繰り出せる。だからどんな試合展開も思いのまま。ここまでやるかここまでするか、一生遊べる究極のプロレスゲーム。さあ君も熱いバトルに参戦せよ。バーチャルプロレス2
王道継承。
If you like this video, be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Also, if you would like to support me on Patreon, please click the link below. If you would like to contribute but not sign up for my Patreon, you can always click the donate button up above. Thanks everyone for watching.